Meggs,
Here.
Scylla,
Here.
Borstein.
Here. Pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I have an approval of the agenda, please?
I move approval of the agenda.
Second,
Do we need a roll call for that one? Yes.
Gaffney,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I did notice that our consultant, Jill Barnes, has joined us, and the board, if it should so desire, could entertain moving up item number 10 in the agenda, either before committee reports out or wherever in the agenda you feel would be appropriate. That's item number 10, just for your information.
I have no problem moving it before the committee reports out.
All right, I'll amend my motion to move item number 10 before item number 4.
and I'll second that.
Roll call.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yay.
Scylla,
Yes.
Borstein.
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Okay. Now we have open time for the public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agendas. Anyone wishing to address the board of directors on matters within the district jurisdiction, but not on the posted agenda, may do so. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The board may not take action on or discuss items not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements or questions by a member of the public. The board president may refer any matter to staff for further follow-up or elect to have the matter placed on an agenda for a future meeting. I don't see any public here, so seeing none, let's move on to item number 10.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for moving this up in the agenda for our consultant Barnes. This proposal requests the board to authorize me to execute task orders 9 and 10 with Jill Barnes Consulting for $173,863 for project management support services on 2 projects. So that this is a budget that is requested for being the project manager on the force main appurtenances project, which is underway, and the Laurel Grove Sewer Rehabilitation Project, for which we are opening bids tomorrow. I authorized purchase orders in April with Jill Barnes to get these projects underway. You know, I had nurtured and begun the force main project and was able to hand that over as far as the weekly meetings and the day-to-day coordination to Jill. This is work she's been doing for us for a couple of years now, or more than that. But since I've been here, she's done a fabulous job being project manager for the Butterfield Meadowcroft Arroyo project, as well as the bridge projects that haven't come before you yet because they've been postponed by the towns of Ross and San Anselmo. But she continues to nurture those projects for us. So given that we're short-staffed in engineering, this was a good fit to kind of create a bridge between the current work and then the future work when the new engineer comes on. And so the detailed work scopes are included in the packet. Right now, she's managing the bid process for the Laurel Grove project, which is complicated. You know, you get contractors coming in with their comments, some of which need to reflect changes in plans and specs. And so we're wrapping that up and opening bids on Thursday. I recommend that you approve this budget, and I did invite Jill here to just answer any questions or maybe provide a little overview of her sense of, you know, the project management challenges of these 2 projects this summer. and drawing on her experience from recent projects. She's been very valuable in the relationship with the local jurisdictions and the encroachment permits, and even working with residents, some real helpful work in San Anselmo this past year. And of course, you probably know Jill used to be the Public Works Director for the city of Mill Valley. So with that, Jill, if you want to unmute yourself and make yourself available for, or make any comments on these projects, and then that you'd like to tell the board. And
yes, absolutely. Good evening, members of the board, and thank you for advancing this item up on your agenda. As Steve explained, I've been managing a few projects for the district since roughly 2016. The most recent project, I hope you can hear me, was the Butterfield project up to Arroyo, which had challenges. But for these two projects, the Laurel Grove Sewer Rehab and Force Main Appurtenance project, there are particular challenges with working with the Bon Air Shopping Center on the Force Main project, as well as environmental issues with working at Pixley Park and being close to Ridgeway rail nests. And then with the Laurel Grove project, that will need to be constructed in close coordination with the county's project to rehabilitate Sir Francis Drake, which is over like the $20 million project. And they have now moved that up in their schedule to begin construction in June for utilities. So we've accelerated our schedule for the Laurel Grove project, and it will require night work for 3 weeks on Drake. And my job will be to manage those projects, support management under Steve's supervision, and then just really coordinate with the district and also work on communications with the residents for the night work and the noise impacts that will be impacting folks on Laurel Grove and Kentfield. And everybody's frozen, so I hope I'm still connected.
yeah, you're fine.
Oh, good. Okay. That's all I wanted to add. I thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited to work on the projects for the district, if you so decide.
So, hi, it's Michael here. Why don't we do this? Because I can see everybody. If any of just sort of poke your hand up and I'll call on you if anybody would like to say. So I open it to the board now. Any questions for Jill or Steve? Okay. Director Miggs, please.
This is sort of a kind of broad question. I'm sort of one of these people that try and see how communities share costs and between cities or county. Is there any of this project that we're doing, can any of it be shared costs with the county in any form or manner?
I think Steve.
It's always a good question to ask. It usually, the costs are usually borne if the infrastructure that's under the jurisdiction is being upgraded. In the case of our sewer work, where we're overlapping jurisdictions and mostly roadways, we are on the hook to replace infrastructure and improvements that we temporarily have to dismantle to do installation of our infrastructure. So it's not really reasonable for us to request the county to cost share when we are disrupting the infrastructure in order to do our upgrades. So that becomes our cost. And so the only cases where we might do cost share is if we happen to maybe fix something underground, like let's say a storm drain. If there was an opportunity, they had some deficiencies in their storm drain system, manholes or pipes. If we included a bid item to do some upgrades to their system, we could request reimbursement from them or have an arrangement for them to pay for that bid item. And we could invoice the county in the case of Laurel Grove. But that's not the case here, where they haven't, during the project review, they have not signaled to us that there was any infrastructure they would like us to include in their scope.
I guess I should have been more simplistic and more direct. I was just thinking about tearing up the road. I mean, that's the usual. I've seen roads, you know, ripped up 2 or 3 times, and they did not coordinate the project. So that's kind of more of what I was looking for, because that's going to happen. So
it does. We also, there's bad luck and good luck. You know, I'll give you, in these 2 projects, it's a great example. So should I give you the good luck first and then the bad luck? The good luck is just went in, there's some interference there. Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
Doug, mute your computer, please.
Yep,
Yep,
thank
thanks.
you.
Go
I
ahead.
had my cell phone on. I couldn't hear.
Here.
Okay.
There we go.
All right.
When I ask for feedback, that's not the kind we're looking for, Doug.
Thank you.
Great. Okay. A good luck example on the force main project was we just replaced, and it's done, we replaced the air release valve in the Latterman Lane area last week. That happened to coincide with the homeowners association in Cape Marin is doing a planned paving project. So now they're underway doing the paving so that we didn't have to, rebuild something or pay for it. In this instance, it was good luck because we got the work done and now they're doing the paving. So we don't have to pay for the paving. How about, and then the bad luck example is Laurel Grove. That was paved about 5 years ago by the county, and it's on their moratorium list. There was such a high volume of projects this district was doing over the last 5 years that this particular high priority project did not get designed and built in time to be in advance of that paving project. So our construction methods in that case, to try to minimize the cost with repairing paving, we're doing most of it using a trenchless method of pipe burst. So we're not trenching all the way down the road. We're going to upsize and we'll just have pits and potholes where we connect the laterals back to the larger sewer. So it's not, it doesn't work perfectly each time, but in the case of these 2 projects, we have a good luck and a bad luck example.
great, thanks. I just always ask that question. That's all. Thank you.
Any other board members at this time? Well, seeing none, it was discussed yesterday at the Finance Committee, and we looked at it closely, and we thought it was appropriate to move ahead with this. So I would like to, if anybody has a motion.
I'd move to move ahead. Jill Barnes Associates have done good jobs in the past, and we need to move this project along.
So
I move that we authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of council, to execute task orders 9 and 10 with Jill Barnes Consulting in the total amount of $173,863 for project management support services on the fiscal year 2019-20 Force Main Apaturances project number 96. Did I say that wrong? And Laurel Grove Sewer Rehabilitation project number 949. How do I say that word?
Appurtenance.
I'll second appurtenance.
Thomas
Okay.
seconded. Thomas seconded, and so roll call, please. That's the feedback we like, Doug.
Thank you.
Okay. Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
Borstein.
Yes, thank you.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jill. Have a good evening. Yeah, thanks, everyone. Appurtenances, really, honestly, they're valves, right? There's air release valves and isolation valves, but it's a fancy word. It makes us engineers feel like we're doing something real important.
Okay, number 4.
I thought you put it there to make the directors look bad.
Number 4, committees report out. Finance Committee. Tom, you want to start?
Yes. The Finance Committee met yesterday. Michael and I, we went over the finances of the district. Everything looked fine to us. We reviewed just about every item. We spent a lot of time on the establishment of the California Employee Pension Pre-Funding Trust, an investment program that looks pretty good. And we also spent a considerable amount of time on the budget. And we're, as I understand, on agenda item 11, we're considering accepting a draft budget, and that's going to come back to us at another meeting. Did you want to add anything, Michael?
No, that was it. And we did spend a lot of time, and I think we're going to have some guests when we talk about the pension stuff, Steve. Yeah, so they will hopefully just join us soon. That's on item number 6, so that's coming up. Okay, Central Marin. Doug, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So we continued our declaration of an emergency. We recommended a final approval design for the cogen system installation project so that we would be able to use our diesel generator when we lose PG&E power without having to set it manually, so that there were some design changes to ensure that that worked smoothly. We had some issues with some delivery of chemicals. We've changed a vendor because one of our vendors can no longer, well, their contract is up and they don't wish to renew. So it went back out to bid, and we've got a new contractor. Biosol's hauling services has been changed to Denali Water Solutions, and that was a bid. And we also adopted the construction contract documents for the secondary clarifier. We're changing the clarifiers one at a time. We also talked about the grand jury web transparency, and I believe the recommendations of the grand jury have already now been met, and that's on our current website. CMSA is about to show us, the board, their new website, which is not out yet, not published, but has been designed. So those recommendations have already been met.
If I could just mention about the cogen engine, when we had those power outages last year and the diesel kicked in, because of the design of the old system, we couldn't burn biogas to run the agency during that time. And so we had to flare the biogas while using diesel. And that seemed like a silly thing to do. So the board at that time told Jason, why don't you see what it would take under the new system so that won't happen again? So under the new system, if there's a PG&E outage, we can burn biogas until such time as we need the diesel, and so they will be able to talk to each other and kick in as appropriate. And those changes have been made so that when the new system kicks in, which I believe is about next January or February, that will all be in place. Very exciting.
So Jason, the cleaner, this is the official magazine of the California Water Environment Association, and CMSA is on the cover with your illustrious
photos in that article.
Illustrious GM is featured on the cover. But a great story, you know, I mean, a lot to be proud of there as far as the beneficial reuse of food waste from grocery stores and restaurants, and how that's being turned away from GHG emissions and landfills to energy and net positive to the grid. So it's something to be very proud of.
And the Central Marin Sanitation Agency does not have personalized face masks like we do. So Mr. Dow, when he rides his bike from the district, the agency to Novato, where he lives, or back the other direction, is wearing a Ross Valley Sanitary District face shield. So
We provide the majority of the influent to his treatment plant. So
anyway, North Bay Watershed Association, please.
Okay, we had a meeting on May 1st for 2 hours. By the way, we're in the midst of hiring a new director. If you know of anybody you think that would be a great person, let Judy Kelly know. We also talked about budget, but not very much. There's $185,000 in the pot, and I believe the only project we're working on right now is in Napa County, and it's a re-oaking project. We did have a guest speaker, James Muller from the SFEP, but basically he did a short presentation on the IRWMP plan. Now, I know you all know what that is. And just to go over it, it is an integrated regional water management plan. So North Bay Watershed is actually one of the original members of this group. And they were created in 2002 for collaboration and to implement effective regional water management solutions. So that was discussed. Hold on one sec.
Yeah, Pam, sorry to interrupt, but just to let you know, because when I worked at the state level, to give you a little sense of why do regional water management, there really aren't any incentives out there for agencies to really work together to do things unless they're pulled together in a permit like we are, an NPDES permit. So this program was initiated as a incentive for Napa, Sonoma, Marin to work together and to get state money to help fund projects they might not otherwise be able to do. Because it's hard to incentivize governments to work together. So that was the intent when IRWM was put together in the 2000s, was to create an incentive for local governments to pool resources and to do joint projects. So just a little background.
Thank you for that history. I wasn't on the board then, so I wouldn't know. I think it was, yeah. Okay, so going back, let's see, where was I? So he talked about funding projects, kind of what you just talked about, Steve. But there's a big emphasis right now on tribal participation, and that was pretty interesting to hear that. So anyway, their action was to adopt this revised plan in order to keep the North Bay and the rest of the region qualified to receive funds. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. And there's another meeting next month. The first Friday in June. And that's it.
President Borstein, you're on mute.
I'm not muted. A verbal report by board members and requests for future items. Director Miggs.
I received some information about the Larkspur Landing potential, what we're doing next. And I was wondering on the next board meeting if we could get some clarification on where we're going, selling versus leasing. I guess there's been some public information out there. And I would just like us to review what our timeline is and what plans we have. And because I haven't heard, I don't know what's going on. And so it's been months. And that's it.
maybe Steve, would this be an appropriate time to just give a little verbal report? Because I know we're starting up. I think we're due to start back up the work at the landing shortly.
I don't think we can. It's not on the agenda.
I have on
The
6.
verbal report.
I have a verbal report to give on item number 6.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the next by board members. Yes. Okay. Any other board members at this point? Okay, let's go on to number 6, verbal report by general manager. Wait,
Yes.
Doug Kelly has a question here. Unmute.
That's why you weren't listening to me. Just wanted to get an update on the Comcast building.
Actually, I think Tom and I had a conversation yesterday after the finance committee, and I'll try and do the best I can here. We are this close to being able to actually sign a lease, and the difficulty is that it's a little bit cart before the horse. We can't get in. Everything's loosening up. We have been not able to get in as much as we would like to be able to finalize the drawings of the build out that we're going to need to do on the second floor and the build out for the Comcast moving downstairs. And so we can't really sign a lease until we're able to get in and do that. But we feel that we're very, very close. And at this point, hopefully by the next board meeting, we'll be able to report back that we're in full agreement, because that's really the only thing left that I'm aware of between us and getting the lease signed is, and if we can get in and do actual final drawings, then we can actually have people, we can look to go out and bid and see what the bids come so we can see what the actual costs are. Anyway, I think that's in a nutshell. Tom?
What we discussed was going to like a 2 parallel track system. One, discussing how much we'll contribute to tenant improvements, but 2, working on completing the architectural drawings so we can go out for bids. And I think we, of course, would prefer to have solid bids so we know exactly what things would cost and what we're negotiating with them. So I think we're going to give the architects the word to go ahead if we can. Have to get Comcast to agree to that.
So that lease and the bids will come before the board?
Oh, yes, I believe so.
They have to.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, number 6, verbal report by general manager, please.
Yes, I've got a few items. We'll go ahead and start with Larkspur Landing. We have got the go-ahead from the city of Larkspur that it's okay to resume the soil cleanup project. And so remobilization of the soil cleanup project will begin June 1st. And they've already begun surveying activities, and we have full confidence that we will complete the cleanup this summer. My hope is to do it by the end of July, but it may not be that quick because there are some unknowns. We are getting into some deep excavations where we may run across cultural resources, which require a little bit of a slower pace if we encounter them. So, but that's going well. And yes, today, you may recall in the business plan, we had a plan this fiscal year to issue a request for proposal or request for qualifications for real estate consulting services for the Larkspur Landing property. That was in our business plan. We've been working on that using some templates, and today we released a request for qualifications for consulting services for the district, and proposals are due June 29th. That doesn't mean development proposals. That means consulting services for an experienced firm to assist the district in managing the process of how to properly, what the proper disposition of the property should be to realize the best value for the ratepayers who are the owners of the property. So it's just a matter of getting some expert consultants in who advise public agencies on property disposition. And that's really the goal here. So we have met with some different folks and get a sense of who their example clients are. And, one might be, City of Napa, or, it might be a private property holder, over on the East Bay. But there are other properties, even north of us at St. Vincent's, you're probably familiar with that property. Those type of experiences, the public entity or the private property owner will engage real estate consulting services to assist them in managing that process. So that's what we are doing. It's consistent with what we said we were going to do in the business plan. And from there, we'll get the proposals, and we may have interviews in the July timeframe. And the goal is to select a consultant in the August board meeting. So that's an update on that. Another item unrelated is I was asked to participate in a CWEA CASA joint webinar in June on the wipes issue. It's the wipes webinar. So we're going to be going back and looking at some data we've been collecting. There's not a lot, but we do the metrics, right? So we're looking at service calls. I'm going to look at some of the soft blockage data and see if we can pull together some quantitative information. Qualitatively, as I noted in my GM bulletin this month, or for April, we haven't been seeing an increase in soft blockages that are wipes related, nor have we seen an increase in wipes accumulation at the bar screens in our pump stations. And, I can't say that's causal with our public education and outreach, but it's certainly not hurting, right? Because other entities have reported increases in wipes related clogs and incidents in their collection systems in the Bay Area. But I ask staff every week, are we seeing more wipes accumulation because of the coronavirus? And it does not seem to be the case. So we're going to do a little data mining and see if we have a story we can tell the other folks. But it seems to be, in our neck of the woods, we're not seeing the increases that others are seeing. I got approached this month by the Friends of Corte Madera Creek. They have, some of their constituents asked them, hey, is it safe to swim in Corte Madera Creek? And, so Sandy Goldman shared with me her stock answer, and I read it and I thought, well, gee, that's kind of like a 2000s level answer. Would I swim? The answer is yes, I would swim in Corte Madera Creek. In fact, I've kayaked in Corte Madera Creek, which is a water contact recreation, and I think it's safe. But I wouldn't do it within 4 days of a storm. It's just not a good idea in any urban area in the United States to swim in the ambient water after a storm. It's just, so there's always an asterisk. Okay, now I've said that. Where's the data, right? It's like, oh, isn't the county collecting data? No. Oh, really? Well, people put in there. You got the rowing club. You got, I kayak there. What's going on? So we asked county health. They have their beach sampling. They don't do Corte Madera Creek. long story short, you know, no one's collected data, and it would be useful. Now, we're not required to do it, but I happen to know someone down the street who has a lab.
That guy.
Yeah. So, you know, I said, you know, so I got in touch with him, and I asked the friends to, you know, give us a sense of where people swim, you know, and maybe we'll work together and maybe figure out a sampling program that we can recommend to the county, maybe do a pilot and then hand it over to them. So the friends are working on that now, and I'll just play a facilitating role because we're interested. It's an indicator of how our sewers are doing too, you know. And if we find anything, my philosophy is, hey, we should be looking for trouble and fix it if we find it. So, you know, I'll keep you updated on where that goes. And that's all I have.
I'm really glad you did that, Steve. I think it's a public duty to do it, but also the results should be interesting. And if it's clean enough to swim in, that is a testament to both you know, Corte Madera Sanitary, Ross Valley Sanitary, Central Marin. So.
While you're at it, see if you can find COVID in it.
Yeah.
When I was a senior at Redwood High School in 1974, I rowed crew, and they basically just said, don't fall out of the boat. And I'm not as tall as most crew members, and you may have noticed I'm vertically challenged. And I would do this thing called catching a crab, which is if your stroke isn't as long as everybody else's, it can go up and catch you under your arms and eject you from the boat. And there were a race where the boat finished without me, and I went home and scrubbed with bleach. So,
That was 1970.
that was 1974.
Yeah, that was right when, you know, the Clean Water Act just got started. And the bay wasn't safe to swim. It is now, and actually that's, you know, my studies of hydrodynamics in the bay. I know that on a given tide, you get a twice flushing of the Corte Madera system 2 to 4 miles upstream, twice a day, a pulse.
Yeah.
So I know you're getting clean water in that. So that's why my hypothesis is it's going to be clean. But, you know, you don't know until the data show up, and then you need to interpret it, and there's confounding factors. So I say let's find out. You know, we may learn something as far as things we can make a priority of working on if necessary.
Okay, thank you. Number 7, the consent calendar. Matters listed under this item are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. The consent calendar may include resolutions. Therefore, the motion, second, and vote will also be applicable to the resolutions and recorded accordingly. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless requested by a member of the board or of the public prior to the time of board votes on the motion to adopt. Would anybody like to pull anything? Doug is raising his hand.
I just want to make a comment on 2 things. One, I love the purchase of more smart covers. Wasn't there a sort of a smart cover de minimis and a smart cover full on? Is that right, Steve? Are there 2 options now?
Can we come back to that, Doug, and just let's find out who wants to pull what, and then we'll answer questions. And I see Pam.
C and D.
C and D and Pam.
B and D, please.
Okay, so B, C, and D. So let's go and let's make sure I'm doing this appropriately so I don't do anything bad. No, if we can look at B, and Pam had questions about that.
It's one quick question. So on page 18, I'm just going to say in general, the phone bill and the internet bill. On that page, it's about 4,000. And then on page 20, there's another phone, just a phone bill is 3,000. This is a month. I'm curious, is there a way we can consolidate those services? Or is this an average of 7? It's actually over 7,000 a month. I'm just curious on that. Thank you.
Any staff? Felicia?
Sure, I'd be happy to look into that and report back to the board.
Okay.
Great.
C. Doug was thanking us for the smart covers, which, by the way, 6 years ago when Tom and I got on the board, that I think was on the first agenda that we did, was approve, I think, 6 or 7 smart covers in the first run. So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, you know, and actually after that initial purchase, as we told you in the staff report, it was soon thereafter, about 2 or 3 months later, that we got the remainder of the smart covers that is in our current inventory. So it was all back in the year 2016 that we got all of these items, which for the reasons described in the staff report, they've really proven their worth time and time again. They've paid for themselves multiple times. And so at this point, we've identified additional uses beyond those places that we can cover. We're relying on them to be a substitute for actually having to have staff, on-call staff, go out and check things out. Over time, we're having to do that less and less. So the overtime costs are coming down accordingly based on the smart covers. So that's really the logic for getting more, is that we've seen the usefulness of having them places like upstream of pump stations and just parking them there during the wet season, and then we need them in more surveillance capacity around the system. So we've identified the need to expand the inventory. You had a question about, you know, the different levels of smart covers. I don't think we made that distinction here. Stephen Mixis is at a Baywork meeting right now. I was hoping he'd be able to join us by now, but I don't have an answer right off the top of my head about that distinction, other than, I mean, they're basically level monitors. You know, they don't tell us the flow rate, and I don't really expect them to. You know, it's just, are we getting a water level reading? And so I'm not real sure about the distinction of what additional technology you're talking about.
At the last conference, I was speaking with the owner of the company, and I think he told me, or I recall him telling me, he was coming out with sort of a smart cover light. So I just like to look into that. You know, we're going to need a lot of these things. So, and I'm sure that the full-on product is much superior, but maybe we'd be able to get a bunch of the light versions, if there is such a thing, moving. Because the more the merrier. I mean, you know, I don't know how many manhole covers do we have altogether? Like thousands and thousands and thousands.
Well, there's a 5,500 rod hole manholes.
Right. So we're never going to get there. But you know, maybe, and nor would we probably need to. But if there's a lighter version and we could put a slew of those out and get some information, that might be of interest. Yeah. I'm fully in support of this.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and I did point out that, you know, we did budget for them this year, and this is quite a bit less than we budgeted.
Item D, Doug.
I'm just wondering if we have any update. I know, you know, the report says, you know, if things change, but has anybody got any input on that from CASA?
I got an email from him about it. It's been postponed. Oh, Julia.
I actually spoke with Cheryl McKelvey, who is the assistant at CASA, and the CASA board actually met this week, and the annual conference will continue, but it will look drastically different than conferences in the past. So there will be some pre-recorded sessions, some live sessions virtually. I'm not quite sure if all of it will be virtual, but they'll be sending a mass, you know, email once they kind of have all of their marketing materials together.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so it may be all virtual.
It's very possible. And I apologize for not including it in the staff report. They just met, I believe, on Tuesday.
Thank you. That being said, do I hear a motion about the consent calendar? Oh, wait, Pam, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I got my questions answered, so
Okay,
it's all good.
okay. Do I hear a motion?
I move
To
approval
adopt.
of the consent calendar.
Okay, and Tom.
Second, Tom.
Okay. Tom and then Doug seconded. Roll call, please.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meigs, Director Meigs, you're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you. Scylla
Yes.
and Borstein.
Yes, please.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Okay. Number 8 is consideration and approval of the establishment of a California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust SEPT account with CalPERS for the purpose of pre-funding the Ross Valley Sanitary District's required pension contributions and authorize an additional $450,000 payment to open the trust account. And this was one, and we have 2 people, Jasper and Matt, who are going to join us here and give us a presentation in some fashion and talk about and answer our questions. But we spent a lot of time yesterday at the Finance Committee, and Tom and I both agree that this is something that the district, it would be very, very beneficial for the district to do in order to, keep up and with our trying to fund everything. So maybe Steve start and introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Michael. I'm going to ask Felicia to introduce the item and the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you both. So this, as Board President Borstein just mentioned, is a California Employers Pension Pre-Funding Trust, a SEPT. Sometime back in 2014, the Board of Directors for Ross Valley Sanitary District opened a similar type of trust to pre-fund its other post-employment benefits, the OPEB. And we have obviously the OPEB liabilities as well as pension liabilities. So this particular trust would act in a similar fashion as our CERPT, which is the trust that we have that we use for our OPEB liabilities. The SEPT is sort of similar. Steve used a good way of describing it. It's kind of like a little savings account. It's basically an investment account where the district can park its intended contributions to its pension liabilities and gain a little, possibly gain a little interest or investment income during the time in which it's parked there. So it is a CalPERS investment vehicle. I don't think that's an incorrect way of describing it, although Jasper and Matt can correct me on that. I would like to introduce them. They're CalPERS employees. They're responsible for the investments for these funds in the SEPT. Jasper Jacobs and Matt Goss, they have a brief presentation for you. And of course, we're all available to answer any questions.
All right, so real quick, thank you very much to Julia and Felicia and Jasper for kind of working things up to this point. I really appreciate it. Jasper's going to share the information with everybody using a few slides, trying to be concise, but also thorough with respect to your decision-making process. I just wanted to summarize that this is real simple. Pensions are expensive to fund, and they're also volatile to fund. So what we wanted to do at CalPERS since 2015, but weren't able to do until 2019 when a Senate bill number 1413 made it possible, is just create a tool that allowed you to mitigate some of that volatility. It's a voluntary tool. It gives you great flexibility in terms of how much money you want to put in. You're never required to put money in, but you can when and if you wish. You can also reimburse from it and pull that money back into your general fund. So it's really a lot like saving for the future for college for your kids or saving for your retirement, but you actually have liquidity. It's lower risk than the pension fund and designed to be just that, to be less risky than the pension fund, but to outperform Latham County Treasuries. So you can take the best of both worlds and kind of use all three tools together in harmony. So Jasper, you've done a great job of building it all up. Take it away and share with the rest of these folks, which we appreciate your time very much, what we have to offer.
So just to echo what Matt said was, thank you for the time. Thank you for the opportunity. We hope that this will be something that you feel is in your best benefit. As far as the trust goes, it's really been outlined in the sense that it is a trust to help pay for your pension contributions here and into the future. And with that being said, slide 2 of the presentation talks about growing assets, whether it be for your normal cost, your future UAL payments, or even potential ADPs in the future. It is a different time horizon compared to the trust or the PERF, which is the pension. It's also a different time horizon compared to Latham County Treasury. So it has its little niche in there. It's perfect for working with all of these in harmony in order to control your cash flow as best as possible. Yes, the investment does have risk, but it is less than the pension. And it also gives better yields than, say, Latham County Treasury. And so the reason this program was created was to help public employers to be able to pay for the benefits and help them in this process. So earlier I mentioned that it's less volatile. So you have strategies 1 and 2. 1 has a risk of 8.2 and 2 has a risk of 5.2 compared to the pension, which is at 11.4, and of course Latham County Treasury, which are the lowest risks available. When you're using all of these in conjunction, you're able to manage your cash flow in a manner that helps you utilize it to the best ability. Some advantages of the SERP, or excuse me, of the SEPT. The SERP is the trust you're already in. The SEPT is the trust we're talking about. You're leveraging the investment management expertise and the scale that CalPERS has available. The funding policy is directly controlled by the district. So at no point are we going to be calling you, telling you you need to give us some money, because you control that. You control with, if, when, how much, and how often. And then additionally, we are a not-for-profit trust, so we use fees to pay for the performance, which also allows us to have one of the lowest total participation costs available in terms of we are 3 to 4 times less expensive at 25 basis points. Streamline Administration, we've got 6 documents, 3 of which we already have in our position, and the other 3 are very streamlined and easy to do. And I believe that Melvin actually has them already filled out and ready to go. We are GASB compliant, so just like you, we're a public agency. We don't want to have any issues in terms of compliance, and so we provide that in terms of financial reporting. And then lastly, we're going to go on to the next slide, which is our contact information, because you have a dedicated customer outreach and support team. You have myself, you have Matt, you have Karen Lookingbill, who you can contact directly at any point if you have any questions or any concerns. We're here to serve you and to help you in this process. So again, if you need to contact myself, or you need to contact Matt, Karen, even Colleen, Robert Sharp, or even just send an email to our program, you are able to send that directly. And you can get that information actually on our website as well, or our webpage, which is at calpers.ca.gov/CERT.
Hey, Jasper, great job there. On slide number 2, could you really quickly jump back to slide number 2? So if I wanted to, I'm sorry, actually, Jasper, my fault. Slide number 3 is where I was hoping we'd land. There we go. Thanks, Jasper. Okay, sure. So everybody, I just wanted to make sure that you understood what we were talking about here in a specific example, okay? So if you had, let's say, $350,000, $450,000, and you were going to send that amount of money into our trust fund every year because that's what you determined you wanted to do, eventually that money is going to go to the CalPERS pension fund. It's a matter of when you want to send it that can allow you to stretch every dollar in the most optimal way. That's the long-term destination for sure. So in the intermediate period or the interim before doing that, the question is, do I use Latham County Treasury or do I use some alternative option? So you've already been using Latham County Treasury for years, decades even. Okay, so what we're just talking about here is introducing these other options to help you maximize opportunity and earn the most amount of income at a prudent level of risk prior to eventually moving that money into the pension fund. And moving that money into the pension fund is a moving target. Some years are better than others based on what their anticipated rate of return is going to be come June 30. So with this additional option that you'll be voting on here tonight, you're basically just creating an additional tool in your toolbox to utilize as well as the existing tools you already have. And so with that being said, let's just open this up for any questions that you have. I think it's really important that you make an optimally informed decision, and we can probably answer any of your questions. So I'd like to do that. So thank you for the opportunity. Jasper, great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, if we can move off of the, and so I can see everybody, so I can see if anybody wants, I can't.
Jasper, go ahead and stop screen sharing, please.
I'm trying. I'm not. GoToMeeting's not our usual, so I'm working on it.
He's finding the button.
There you go.
There we go. Sorry about that. We use WebEx, so.
Felicia, do you have anything else you'd like to add before I open it up to the board? Not hearing you, Felicia.
I think Matt and Jasper covered most everything. I might add one thing. Oh, sorry. You can't hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Felicia, I believe you're on a delay again.
Oh, yeah. Well, then I might have to phone in. How about now?
Better.
It's better.
Still nothing? Better?
Yeah.
All right. Apologies for my internet connection. The only thing I want to add is that the district can take out the funds from this account, whereas when you make a contribution into, directly into the pension, the CalPERS pension fund, it disappears forever into their control. So this is just sort of one more leash that we have on our contributions to our pension liability. So something I want to add at the beginning, and I think that's important management of this particular trust.
So Felicia basically just put me out there, and she let everybody know that I'm the one employee at CalPERS that's saying, don't send us money to that bucket. And I think it's a really valid point. Eventually the money will go there. And the question is when. And there are, again, good times and there are not so good times. And we work here 365 days a year. So you can call us all the time to talk to us about when that might be. We're not advisors. We don't go as far as that. We're not qualified to be that. But we do understand best practices, and we have almost 600 customer experiences, yours included in OPEB, that we can look at the data sets on and interpret and come up with what we think is probably the median for best practices. And we'll share that with you anytime you want to know.
Okay, Tom.
Okay, so what we discussed was that this fund lets you go in and out. It invests in more conservative investments than the pension fund, which it fluctuates wildly. And as you know, it's down a lot this year. There's a lot of the investments are in fixed income, somewhere between 50 and 75 or 73%, I think it was, are in fixed income. And so that makes it more stable than, and what we want to do is preserve our contributions, our extra contributions, and also earn a reasonable rate of return on them. The other thing we discussed was picking between the, option 1 and option 2. And we were told that it's a very good idea to dollar cost averaging in. So I think staff what we're looking for today is just to set up the trust fund. I think staff would invest the money probably quarterly instead of just making a lump sum at a high or a low. Do dollar cost averaging. And for the first round, what Matt and Jasper suggested was about out of the 450,000, about a third go into the more conservative one, and I think that's step 2 or option 2, and for just this first one, and then 300,000 into the slightly less conservative one, and then from then on we put our money entirely into the less conservative one, because we're not planning to take it out anytime soon. So that was also what we learned yesterday.
That's helpful, Tom. Thanks. I do view this as that. It seemed like if you look at black and white, where black is the pension fund, which has more volatility and risk and ups and downs, and white is LAIF, which is really conservative, and it's like putting money into your savings or some kind of like a checking account where you can definitely get it out in LAIF, but you're actually losing money over time because the interest rate's so low. This is that middle ground where you can park these commitments to fund the unfunded liability and still get some rate of return in this interim period before it goes into the pension fund. So you're maximizing the value, if you will, of that committed amount of money for the paying down the pension liability.
My understanding from yesterday was that basically, it's all going to get there eventually. It just gives us more tools in our toolbox to determine when it's going to go in to maximize our benefits.
You guys can work for us anytime you want to work for us. We need more callers.
Funny thing you said that, Matt. I was just going to tell Steve that was a great way of explaining it. Did you need a job?
Yeah. Okay, Pam.
Looking at page 41 of your report, there is a management fee of 0.25% of assets. How does that compare to what we were doing before? That's one question. And
Sure.
then I know that CalPERS in the past has had a lot of issues and problems, and I've lost track because it was so complicated, and I just want to be sure that we're doing the right thing, the right time. And then third, penalty fees. Are there any? I don't foresee us having the money, needing the money, but I've seen some bad things happen on the district, and I want to make sure if we had to get out the money, we can get it out, and is there any fees involved? Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. Those are fantastic questions, and they're questions of a responsible fiduciary. So I'm going to answer all of them in this order. Question 3 first, I'll answer that, then question 1, and then question 2. So we're going to talk about penalties and then costs as compared to other options, and then we'll talk about politics, or just not running the ship as well as we could have at certain points in time. Okay, so the first question about penalties, there are none. There are only costs associated with investing money for people, and those people are public agencies like yourself. So I should say agencies. But with that said, the current fee rate is 25 basis points of assets under management. That means if you had $100,000 with us for 365 consecutive days, we would charge you $250. If it was $1 million, it'd be $2,500. There are no other costs. And we will account for that transparently on a daily basis through an online record keeping system so that you will be able to see that. So I'm starting to segue into question number 1 here, but I'll say that if you ever wanted to terminate, you can do so for free. You would move your assets to another qualified Section 115 trust fund, piece of cake. So it's not like the same thing as trying to get out of the pension fund relationship at CalPERS where they drop the rate at 7% assumed return down to a risk-free rate of what might be 2%, 2.25% these days, and you can't afford to leave. So it's not that at all. So there are literally no other fees, no one-time fees, no, you decide to quit before 3 years fees or termination fees, like kind of the mortgage equivalent of a prepayment penalty, something like that. Okay, going to question number 1. The 25 basis points would only be matchable minus 5 basis points. So the lowest that I've seen is a 30 basis point offering to another agency by one of our competitors who had $50 million in assets under management in their 115 trust. So I don't think that Ross Valley Sanitary District is large enough to ever get competitive rates from one of our competitors because they have a for-profit layer built into their costing. Finally, as it relates to CalPERS, good question. The CERT OPEB trust, which you've been in since 2015, totally separate, unique, and distinct investment policy from the CalPERS pension fund investment policy. Much more simple, unremarkable, straightforward, money-weighted, unitized, a lot more like a 401k or a 529 scholar share type of investment. Same thing with this investment we're talking about tonight. Also has a unique, distinct, separate investment policy from all the others. Assets are not pooled. The amount of money here in this trust, so much smaller than the pension fund, probably not going to be incorporated into any significant political decisions at any point in time. That said, our board of administration are the fiduciaries. So if you absolutely don't trust our board, well, that's a bit of an issue. But the question at hand is, do you trust them to just allow us to continue to operate autonomously, independently, and do what we've done since 2007? I feel great about it, and I wouldn't be talking to you tonight if I didn't. I think you're going to be fine. What we do know is that the assets belong to the employer, according to Section 115 of the Internal Revenue Code. They can never be taken by anyone, employees, including our board, who are the fiduciaries. They belong legally and solely to the employer and can only be returned to the employer once the employer has reimbursed for valid expenses. So in our contract, it even stipulates this. It says that if you cease to exist, there would be a successor agency, or if there wasn't, we would just pay out the plan responsibilities from the remaining assets until the plan was extinguished. So I think you're safe. There might be a very, very, very tiny percentage likelihood of some situation that worried you, but it is statistically unlikely. Does that answer your question and satisfy your underlying concern?
I think that's a yes. Oh, there you go.
We can get the money out if we need it, basically.
Yeah, so let's just say that your annual cost to the pension system at CalPERS are $100,000 and you have $500,000 in the trust. It would take 5 years to get it all out, or you could just leave us and take it elsewhere immediately. So it depends how much money you have and what your valid reimbursable expenses are. That transaction could be one and done very quickly if you move it to another trust, or if you have a small amount of money compared to your expenses. And that's the same for the OPEB trust that you're already in. Remember, we can only reimburse liquid assets back to you in the form of a reimbursement for valid expenses based on the trust purpose. But in a nutshell, yes, every dollar will come back to you. It's a matter of when, not if, or it will leave and go elsewhere. Same situation elsewhere, by the way. The rules apply across the spectrum of our competitors because it's governed by Section 115 of the Internal Revenue Code.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a great question. Very thoughtful question.
Doug had a question. Doug, did I see you raising a hand?
I just wanted to say that this is something that this board supported, so I fully support this. I want to get these pension and OPEB unfunded liabilities funded. So the more we put in, the more we can, the faster we can, the happier I am.
Happy Doug is a good Doug.
We will try to make you happy, Doug.
Anybody else have any questions for the gentleman? Or can we entertain a motion? Tom,
I move that we, one, approve the California Employer Pension Pre-Funding Trust Participation Agreement. Two, approve the SEP Delegation of Authority to administer and request disbursements. Three, approve the SEP Certification and Funding Policy. And four, approve an initial funding investment of $450,000 to open the trust account.
Second.
okay, moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Gaffney,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Meggs,
Yes.
Scylla,
Yes.
Borstein.
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Okay.
Will we get like semi-annual, semi-annual or quarterly reviews of how it's doing? I think maybe at the, from the general manager's report or Felicia's report, I think that'd be useful.
We can provide something like that to the board, absolutely.
Okay.
And just to support that, we offer for free, the moment you join, in fact, you already have it because you're a part of the OPEB Trust, online record keeping services. So you can see this information daily, monthly, quarterly, annually, and that can be incorporated into a slide deck presentation, much like the one we did tonight, that demonstrates that, illustrates that in a way that's concise and meaningful to all of you.
Thank you.
That's great. And also our contributions on the quarterly basis will show up in our monthly transactions. So we'll make a point of pointing them out, and then that'll get that, we can get some context for that and the value of dollar averaging by getting those reports from CalPERS.
Okay, thank you, Matt and Jasper.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jasper.
Thank you for having us. It's an honor to serve you in a new capacity. We really appreciate your trust in us, and we'll do our best to make sure it was a good decision for you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Moving on to agenda item number 9, discussion and possible direction regarding requests for lateral replacement grant. I know the district has spent a lot of time discussing this, and I think this is very clear. So Steve, why don't you?
Just to remind the board, yeah, we had a member of the public, Molly Cummings, join us last board meeting and request the lateral grant. And so we reviewed the situation, and in this report provided a little context for the lateral grant program, how it was set up, and the volume of the program, and the rules, and how people are qualified for grants. So in taking a little closer look at this case, the only time we would ever award a grant after the work is if there was an emergency situation, and according to the contractor in this case, there was not an emergency. So we're not able to use the grant fund for it. The original program was set up by this board, back in the 2010 timeframe, and there was a lot of concern at the time about, the sensitivity of using public funds for private property, because all laterals are private property. But there's a recognition that there's a public interest in laterals being, meeting certain standards, right? To control infiltration and inflow of stormwater, for instance. So, but in order to make that, to cross that threshold of justifiability for public expenditure on private property, there was really a pretty rigid program put in place that things need to be done up front. For instance, you need to video the lateral to show that there's a public benefit in replacing it before the decision is made to give the grant. So those are some important principles that are embedded in the program, and the reason why we don't award them after the fact, because we need to there's a burden to justify the expenditures of public funds. So, and consistent with implementing that program, also just want to remind the board that we do issue an average of 20 grants a month. And so there's a large volume of these grants that we do approve and we do make available to a great number of our ratepayers. And with that, just wanted to let you know, since you did request an agenda item, we did the research and gave you the details, and it is the board's decision if you feel that the program needs an update in any way to accommodate any situation, and we stand ready to to take direction if you see it fit.
Okay, any board member input on this one? Tom.
Thank you. You know, I requested that this be put on the agenda at the last meeting because our grant lateral program generally follows some plans by the property owner. For example, on a property sale, you know, there's pre-planning, there's time to do this. There's a paving project. That's another example of when you're going to replace your lateral, and then on a remodel. And so I was worried that have we covered the situation where there's an emergency, and that's, you know, if the lateral just is crushed by a truck driving over it or something. And that's what I wanted to find out. And I think that, you know, our program does allow for emergency lateral repairs. And then we discussed a bit to some extent in the finance committee, how would we revise this ordinance to allow, you know, it would, if we don't follow our procedures, then we, you know, we put ourselves in a bad position. So I didn't see how we could revise this ordinance to satisfy the customer, that Molly, what she wanted. That's my input.
Yeah, you know, my feeling was also that, you know, we do roughly 250 of these a year because, you know, people knew what the rules were and followed them. And I think our ordinance works really, really well for those people. And we can't just allow every exception to go through. So that's my opinion. So.
How much money do we have in the grant loan program? Like, are we anywhere near maxing it out?
I think we're getting close. I don't have the latest number right in front of me. We budgeted $400,000 for this fiscal year. The previous fiscal year, we actually expended over $500,000, but we predicted a lower rate this year.
And do we have any information about how much she'd like and in what format she'd like it, or because she didn't submit anything, do we not even know what she wants?
Yeah, I think she's in a zone, not in a high INI zone. So the maximum that someone in her neighborhood would qualify for would be $1,500.
And has she followed up since she came to our last board meeting? Like, is she pursuing this, or is this just for our consideration at this point?
She might have called in.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't heard from her.
I mean,
You sent me an
the
email.
fact that she thought that she was under the impression somebody else had filed the paperwork, it seemed to be like a scheduling thing, like the guy was there and could do it then. You know, we've made exceptions before for folks who were in tough situations when we actually had the money and we want to encourage people to, you know, replace their laterals. I wasn't inclined to reject it unless she's actually not actively pursuing it.
Well, Mary, my understanding is that she actually had two contractors, and correct me if I'm wrong, come out and prepare a bid. So first of all, it was not an emergency. A. B, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the first contractor actually filled out the paperwork for the grant program, and my understanding is I don't think she signed it and turned it in. And so, and I could be wrong, but I don't think any paper, you know, it just doesn't seem like it met any of the criteria in the ordinance.
Okay, so we don't have anything to even consider. So, I mean, I would say if she comes back around and makes some and provides some facts or something else for us to consider, great. But it doesn't even seem like we have enough information to, make any changes at this point.
Am I wrong about any of what I just said, Felicia or Steve?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, great. So, no, I haven't heard anything more from Ms. Cummings, and I don't know, Steve, if you have, but I believe Sasha or Christina would have let me know if they had heard from her. I do have some information about the remaining grant and loan funds. As of May 5th, we had about $12,800 left in grant funds remaining for the rest of the fiscal year, and $145,000 remaining for the loan program. And so we're probably going to be using some of the loan program. The loan program's not as popular as the board may remember as the grant program is. So we'll probably be using some of the loan program money to help supplement the grant program through the end of the fiscal year. And then, as Steve pointed out, she would be eligible for a $1,500 grant had she submitted the paperwork timely. And we're not really certain why she didn't, other than the fact that she seemed to have two plumbers kind of lined up, and then she maybe started the grant process with one plumber and then wound up actually having the work performed by the other plumber. So the district staff, I think our record is been very good about assisting customers with their grant application process. We processed many of them successfully, and I'm not quite sure exactly how her application didn't get submitted. Clearly from her comments, I think from the last board meeting, she's busy and she just wasn't able to make it in.
So
I've had a few emails from her, very, very upset and desperate. She's lost her job. She got all confused on who was supposed to do the grant paperwork, as stated in the report here. I just I know this is a little bit of an exception, but if you look at the big picture, I think she meant well, and I just kind of feel like maybe if she came forward and showed an appeal about the time frame, and her true intention was to follow the books. I mean, I could tell. So, and it's also, she's cleaning up the environment. I don't know. I know there's some issue about her selling her house. I didn't know any of that information, but I don't even know if that's still happening or what. So with the COVID thing, she's just really having a horrible time with money. So it would be a benefit. I'm wondering if, because she said in the last month that she wasn't quite clear on if the district was supposed to get back to her. So I think she thought that somebody from our last meeting, she thought somebody was supposed to call her or get back to her. So I don't know. I just think out of a good neighbor, maybe we should reach out and see, does she understand she needs to fill out the application, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. So I don't even know if she's on one of our callers tonight. So anyway, that's it.
Doug.
Pam, she knew this was on the agenda, correct?
I don't know. I think she did. She never said that to me. I just told her there was an upcoming meeting, whether she, followed through.
You directed her to where the agenda was.
Yeah, I gave her the
So she asked
instructions.
where the agenda was, so she had to know it was on the agenda.
I'm wondering if she just read it and gave up. Probably just gave up. I don't know.
Are you suggesting that her home is for sale?
That was in the report in here, that there's some mention about potentially she was going to sell her house.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Mary. I don't have any information on this that's going to help me give anybody any direction on anything.
Yeah, and
I don't think I wouldn't say no, but she needs to fill out the paperwork and then ask for a waiver of the deadline. And
I just would hope, I think she, well, I can't say.
I'll give it a little staff input.
I think she needs help.
The ordinance does not allow for a waiver.
Can I finish? I was hoping the district had called her from Felicia or Steve just to check in, but nothing happened. So I'm wondering if she's felt totally unclear and uneducated on really what to do. I don't know. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me just, Steve, before you say something. First of all, she was the one who brought it before the board the last time. And when she brought it before the board, it's now a board issue, not a staff issue. So I'm not really that, the staff investigated and provided with this, but at that point, she's talking to the board, not to the staff. So I have no issue with, she could have called and asked if that was of interest. Hang on. And I really, as much as I'm like a bleeding heart and want to let everybody have everything, 250 people a year are able to get this done, and there's just too many questions about this one. And I don't know if it's in, anyway. Steve, go ahead. You really had something to say there. That the ordinance just does not allow for this, and we would have to change the ordinance, which we discussed yesterday. And if we want to change the ordinance to allow something like this, the ordinance seems to work fine, in my opinion, and the years I've been here, and it works for all these people. And this one, it didn't work, and Doug, please.
At the last meeting, she was in the phone call when Tom Gaffney asked to put it on the agenda, the next agenda item.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to what I said, which was to agree with Mary. We don't have enough of anything to do anything about this. I don't think we need to discuss it tonight anymore.
Yeah. So is there anything we need to do? There'll be no more discussion. This, Andrea?
Well, you might want to ask if there's any member of the public that has something to say. There's a couple of callers. I'm not sure. I think one of them's Doug, but there may be another one.
I think the other one's
I'm the call because I don't like the sound on the iPhone.
I just want to make sure there wasn't somebody else on.
Caller two are Doug and Felicia.
Okay.
Is there anybody else in cyberspace out there that we can't see or hear from? I mean,
I would say if she reaches out again, then, and gives us more information, or I would direct staff, if she reaches out again, have her fill out the paperwork, noting that she is missing the deadline, and then we can consider it. We had all the high strength laundry guys in years ago. We're not afraid to be Santa Claus. And she can review this meeting, the recording of this meeting online too, if somebody wants to direct her to that, so she can see how we considered it. Yeah, I mean, we have the funds for this, and we want this to be done. And circumstances in her life may have made it really, really challenging for her to follow the process at the time. But I think we need all the facts before we can make a different decision.
I believe the ordinance is absolutely. It's a beautiful ordinance. People are copying our ordinance that we have for lateral grant loan program. And
yeah, but I agree, Michael, but I took to heart single mother, sewage backing up. You're not always on top of the paperwork. And so you make decisions, and now she's learned she could get some money back. And given the current situation, where people are struggling financially, it wouldn't, I don't think our floodgates are going to open if we say we're going to give this person a waiver of the time frame that we typically hold people to.
Mary, and we have wordage in there that if it's truly an emergency, but the sewage backing up that she had was not because of the lateral. It was because of the pipes that was underneath her house.
Right, but the contractor was there and said he could fix it then, and he wouldn't be able to fix it later. And I've been in those situations when you have a plumber standing in your backyard who's going to do work for you.
Mary,
you say, go.
Fix what? The emergency was not in the lateral. There may have, there may have not been a problem. She didn't, to the best of my knowledge, CCTV it to, there was just.
Okay, well, we don't know that. Then I revert to me by we don't really have all the facts.
She's certainly welcome. She's certainly welcome to come back again, I guess. But at this point, no, we can't do it. That's.
I agree. We don't have enough information.
Yeah. So, do we need to, Doug?
One last thing. Pam, you've been conversing with her via email, so why don't you reach out to her?
Sure. I mean, it actually started with Larry Bragman, but sure.
Okay.
He reached out to me. So, okay.
Is there anything else we need to do at this time? Okay. Let's move on to number 10. Consideration of, no, we did 10.
That's right.
Number 11. That was quick. This will not be. Consideration of accepting the draft fiscal year 2020-21 budget. And this is not accepting the budget. This is just saying we see that the draft budget is here, and during the next month, we have time to look at it and make comments about it and ask staff about it and come back. So really at this point, let's ask questions, but we're not accepting the budget. We're just asking questions of it. Steve or Felicia?
Yeah, I'll do a high level. I do want Felicia to provide some of the details. If we go to page 4 of the budget, you have a pie graph there that Melvin, who's in attendance, he's the engine behind getting this budget together, and want to give him credit for getting us to the draft budget stage. That chart 2, budgeted expenditures by type, gives you an idea of how we spend the money, what percents go to what. Overall, we're about a $20 million operating budget. And I think overall we're in pretty good shape. Our capital program, which is what I know a little bit more about, has been really peaking. In the last 2 years, around 30 million, which is not sustainable, but we've borrowed money through revenue bonds to be able to pay for it. And this is really paying back, dealing with deferred maintenance of the old system that we have the privilege of managing. So this year, it's of note that our 30 million is coming down to about 15 million, or 14.7 million. It does include, that number does include the Larkspur Landing cleanup. It does include a placeholder budget for improvements to the Anderson building. And so we are really ramping down a bit. And I think, if you dig into the capital side of things, which Schedule 9 looks 5 years in advance. So you can look at that as you review this over the next month. Schedule 9 has a 5-year projection, and you see that something similar next year. And then we really want to have kind of a trough of less capital funding 2 years out to help catch up on our debt service and debt ratio before we launch into another wave of capital. So I just wanted to point that out. Capital is definitely the most dynamic part of our budget, and I've reason to believe that it's well managed. We're in good shape because we're addressing our regulatory requirements, we're dealing with risk-driven issues, and we're setting up the infrastructure asset management plan, which is going to give us a very strong rationale for risk-based capital expenditures going forward that the regional board has already accepted as a way to go forward, so that we can justify a trough in capital spending a couple years out based on risk. You know, that now we're no longer in the realm of having to do 4 miles a year, 8 miles, even 2 miles. We're getting rid of that idea and moving to, we have this much money and we will spend it on the highest risk items. That's where we're going with the IMP. So thanks to your investments in the IMP, it's going to give us a firm basis to move in that direction in capital and get to more of a pay-go scenario. But that, I think, is 2 years away still. Anyway, sorry, I digressed, but I know that's kind of interest with the capital. You know, it's the most dynamic part. Now, our operations and administration costs are going up a bit on because of the salaries that you approved. But remember, those salaries were based on a classification compensation study, which showed we were below market median. So that's, you know, behind those percent increases. And then there's a subtlety there. It looks like, you know, the benefits are increasing 18%. That has to do with your plan to fund the unfunded liabilities. That's where that added expenditures has to go someplace, and that's where it goes, because it's an indirect benefit through the pension and OPEB. And so that's why that number seems to have ballooned a little bit up to the 18%. It's an artifact of where we put the OPEB and pension refunding or funding. And then the salaries themselves come out around in the 8% range, because that's, if you remember the class comp study, it said, you know, on balance, you're about 8% below market median. So it does kind of come together there, but it's still 8%, and we acknowledge it is an increase beyond like a cost of living level. I would point out that, you know, like last year, my first year, this year, we've gone with through the different divisions of the agency, working with the supervisors and Stephen Mixis and Felicia, line by line on the different operating budgets. And we really have come down on the non-personnel costs. You know, we've really trimmed the budgets for equipment, materials, uniforms, you know, other things. We've found a way to really come down. We've come down on outside services in this budget. It's lower this year than last year, and so there's little glimmers of increased efficiency that are embedded within this proposed budget. We do have the 2 ramjets in here under capitalized, you know, equipment. Our ramjets from about what, 8 years ago, Stephen, something like that. You know, they're really we're just running them ragged. We need the new vehicles. The time's come, because we're spending a lot on maintenance of these vehicles. It's going to be more cost effective to get new ramjets. So that's in the proposed budget. Yeah. And so with that, maybe, yeah, I mean, I don't know, Mixis, do you want to make any point, and then I'm going to hand over the floor.
We put a lot of wear and tear on the 2 Vector ramjets. They're not vacuum machines, but each of them's got well over 1 million feet of cleaning. We're spending anywhere from the last 4 years, I think it was 40,000 to 60,000 on JT01, JT02. That's the 2 different trucks. So they are breaking down quite quickly. And they're our main workhorse for the most essential duty of our essential, what we do. So they do need to be replaced, because every time one goes down, it takes about 6 weeks to get back.
Yeah, so we're starting to see that come up in an inconvenient way. You know, we have the Harbins back up, but they're not quite the same as far as how much, you know, the workhorse, like you say, as far as the feet of line cleaned, and that being our #1 preventive measure for SSOs, and especially important during COVID. You know. So it's, yeah, the time, we recommend this is the right time to really look at that. And then, you know, I want to hand over to Felicia to cover anything I may have glossed over as far as highlights of this proposed budget.
Yeah, I think you got all of it, Steve and Stephen. Thank you both. The only couple of adds I might just pitch in here are the district did also in Schedule 9 plan for state revolving fund loan. It was about $5 million that we're hoping to get. We actually got the the application point response back from the State Water Board, and our project scored 14 points, which is the highest available score. Yeah, we're really excited about that. That doesn't mean we're guaranteed funding. We still have to compete with the other, very deserving projects that are within their review. But I think that our consultant, George Hicks from Coastland, did very well by us recommending the match financing. If you recall, we had an option to go with that particular direction, and that gave us an extra 2 points, which I think really paid off. So we're in good shape for that state revolving fund loan, which I wanted to share with the board. And the second point that I wanted to add is that, and it kind of goes back to that grant and loan conversation we were just having a few minutes ago with the remaining funds that we have for this fiscal year. We were projecting next fiscal year to be flat in the grant and loan program of $400,000 and $200,000 respectively. However, it also occurs to us that we are incorporating now Murray Park residents into our service area starting July 1st. The county is planning a paving project in that neighborhood, and so we may want to maybe up the grant program and loan program by just a little bit for this coming fiscal year to anticipate maybe some additional applications from that neighborhood. And other than that, I'm really grateful to Melvin for all the work that he did to put together this budget. It was a very good process this year. And of course, it's a pleasure to work with Steve and Stephen every year on the budget process. And I'm looking forward to the board questions and comments. This is one of the most, this is a highlight of the work that I do every year, putting together the district budget. So I'm all ears and, like I said, happy to chat with you guys about any questions you might have.
Board, raise your hand if you, okay, Tom Gaffney. Unmute, sir. We'll hear you. There you go.
Okay, I have a series of comments which I'd like to go through. And on page 4.
Have a pen ready.
Pardon?
I have a pen ready.
Page 4 of the budget. The third paragraph from the bottom, we contribute about 50% of CMSA's operating cost and 43% of the debt service, which is based on equivalent dwelling units. And so then I went back to our performance review for this year. And if you can turn to it, it's page 152 of the budget. And if you look at our flows to CMSA, they are below, they're either at 50% or below for the entire year. And so our operating costs to CMSA are based on a 3-year running average, I think, of our flows. And so it looks to me like we're going to have to pay less in the future, or at least they're going to factor in this lower year into our CMSA bill. And remember, they lowered it. We got a reduction in it a couple of years ago as well. Then
that's right. That's
a good point. Then what I wanted to talk about was, we did discuss adding $100,000 to the lateral loan program, and maybe to the grant program, and maybe reducing the loan program. We discussed, if you go to page 31 of the budget, this is a big hit for us. It's the salaries have really gone up, and that's what Steve was mentioning. If you take a look at salaries and benefits, they're a big ticket item, and they're up 16% for operations overall, and some also standby overtime. I was surprised that. Oh, I see. We discussed that when it was way under budgeted in previous years, and so we got it up to the But that's a big chunk of our increase for this year. It's the salary hit.
That's right. And if you don't mind, I'd jump in here, Tom, just with the point that the district finance officers, we have a special districts group of finance officers and also of HR managers. And I'm on in both groups. And the finance officers had a conversation recently online about what the anticipated salary increases were going to be this year for each of the agencies, especially in light of the coronavirus pandemic and how that was affecting our economy. And as it turns out, most of the agencies are in the 2.5% to 3% increase. So we're, I think, right in line with that, with our 3% anticipated COLA for this year. The lowest, I think, was actually 1%, and the highest was 4%. So everyone's, at least that's participating in that special district finance group, is experiencing, similar anticipated COLAs. And again, this is partly because of the labor contracts, right? When we have these contracts that we've entered into now with our recent one with AFSCME for 5 years, we have these set salary increases over the next several years.
Yeah. Most of the increase was due to the reclassifications.
And there's definitely, that's a large contributing factor as well.
Right, probably more in the unrepresented though, because if you drill down, you see, depending on what lens you look at, in the operating costs versus administrative costs, but overall is the right, there's a, you have the operations, but you take different slices, like in salaries, I see an 8% increase in admin, and then that's on page 29, and then on page 31 in operations, there's 2 lines. There's line 1 is salaries, but then there's also a line 9 salaries. So is that a and then there's a total of salaries and benefits in line 22. So
yeah, one's a roll up.
Yeah, that combines them, right? Combines admin and operations, right?
Yeah, I think another interesting point about the salary budget is if you're looking at those numbers specifically in the admin category, you'll see for this fiscal year in particular, we're actually going to be under budget by a couple of $100,000 due to the number of vacancies that the district has. So even though we have this budgeted number based on, 35 full-time employees, that's based on our being fully staffed, which we're not now, and even going into next year, we probably won't be for a good number of months into the new fiscal year. So the budgeted number and the actual number may be, I expect it might be a little bit lower, but I'm looking ahead a year, so.
What about on page 30, outside services?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any money for an audit.
We do. It's under professional services other.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
All right.
Not a big budget item, but the equipment rental, page 31, line 24.
Mm-hmm.
What are we renting? Could we? Is this something that could be purchased, or is it a one-off each time?
Steve, I can answer that if you.
Yes, please.
Okay, so during the long-term power shutoffs for PG&E, it's a lot more inexpensive to rent a generator than to purchase one outright, because then you have to maintain one throughout the entire year. There was bypass pumping. There's all kinds of stuff we rent because we don't want to have that footprint of vehicles and the equipment that we need to maintain. So that's why it did go up. We also had a catastrophic failure in the VACON, which is our combination truck, and we had to rent a Vactor, which is a vacuum machine, so that increased the costs.
Okay, thank you.
What's interesting
Director
is,
Meggs has a question.
oh yeah, could I real quick on the generator thing? We're planning for potentially renting a generator because of last year's experience, but we're also concurrently doing a capital project where we're going to replace 2 generators where we were using the rental generators. So we may not use this budget, depending, but
correct.
It's a timing thing. If we get the generators in sooner, we'll use less of this rental budget. If it takes a while, then at least we're covered. But we are planning to do away with some of our generator rental needs by pump station 24 and 25.
Definitely. Director Meggs, did you have a question?
Yeah. By the way, Felicia, thank you. You're awesome. I sent her a bunch of questions earlier. I just have a few. I'm the same as Tom looking at the overtime. Question is, do we have a policy for overtime? And I think we need to come up with some kind of action plan, because that's way over the top, that 780%. That's one comment. On page,
Can we take these one at a time? Is that okay?
whatever way you want to do this.
I don't mind responding to that. That's on line 11 of page 31, and you can, if you look back, first of all, for a point of information, the percentage change is the difference between the fiscal year 2021 budget and the fiscal year 1920 adopted budget. So that's the difference between those two numbers. And you'll see the fiscal year 1920 budget that was adopted was $15,000 for standby overtime, which is woefully underestimated. That was a mistake on our part to put $15,000 on that line item when we know for a fact that we're paying 2 employees 16 hours of overtime every week for 52 weeks a year, which actually turns out to be roughly $83,500. So the $15,000 was a mistake, and that's why you're seeing that big jump of 780%. That said, I think we should also make an adjustment. Melvin and I have already discussed this. It's currently budgeted as $132,000 for fiscal year 2021. We are going to reduce that to a number closer to the estimate that I just gave you of $83,500. So hopefully, Pamela, that explains a little bit of the funky numbers that you see there.
That would be awesome.
Why did the other overtime go up? Why are you increasing the other overtime?
The reason we increased the other overtime is I asked Melvin to look back the past couple of years, what we could find in time control, which is our electronic timekeeping system, and see what was the average increase over the last few years. Unfortunately, we don't have great data much past maybe a little bit more than 2 years ago. And it's really impacted obviously by, storm events. And last year in particular, it was impacted by the PSPS event. But again, this is one of those numbers that Melvin and I have been talking about. We think we should probably reduce that somewhere closer to what was actually expended in fiscal year 1920. So we're going to suggest $198,000 for fiscal year 2021 budget instead of that $261,000 number.
Can I add some comments on that?
My question, or you want to jump around?
Yeah. One factor there also that I saw from time control is the increase of overtime during the power shutdown, and then I think Steve Mixes validated on that numbers before, so that I just took that one of the factor. It might happen again this coming fiscal year 2021, we don't know, so I just put some cushion on it, so you can see a little jump by that number, 133,000 more. Yeah, but we will look at it again.
Thank you, Melvin.
Mhm.
Director Meggs, you had another question or comment?
Yeah, going to page 125, I'm looking at the total operating revenue. We're going to gain 6 million. Is that right?
If you're looking at line 3, total operating revenue, is that right?
Yeah.
So over time, we're gaining
2 million.
looks to me, yeah, to be about 1.2 million.
Okay, so
from last fiscal year.
So we don't foresee any potential needing bonds or anything by the time the 5 years up. Is that correct?
That's right. The only revenue financing activity that we're projecting in our 5-year forecast is the state revolving fund. And that is, do you remember what that was, Steve? Is that about 5 million?
Yeah,
5 million proceeds.
Little under 5 million.
SRF loans. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's in 21-22. So not this coming fiscal year, but the next one after that.
Okay. Page 124, I had a question about the 7,600,000 that we're putting in here as a forecast of funds. Doesn't that throw things off that we actually put that in there? Or are you not considering that as part of revenue? Are you just, I just wanted to know, is that added to the entire revenue, or is it, I know it says forecast, but I want to know, did you include that in a revenue for the district? Because we haven't sold the property.
Correct, not for this coming fiscal year 2021. It's part of that 5-year forecast, which you just pointed out. So we're suggesting that possibly in the subsequent fiscal year that we'll have that $5 million SRF loan and possibly $2.6 million from the sale of Kerner. Possibly. That's just a revenue projection, but not a budgeted dollar amount, not for the coming fiscal year.
Yeah, forecast, not budget.
Okay. And I think I might with the same questions Tom had. Okay, and we talked about you and I talked about the debt ratio percentage. So that's the same as last year. Okay. I think that's it. I don't think I have anything. No.
I'd like to offer at this time, one of the things we did.
Finance. Work Finance Committee.
I wanted to make just an observation. One of the things that's not in the budget is any assumptions about the disposition of the Larkspur Landing property. It's just much too speculative at this time how that would fit into our forecast. But I would submit it's not going to hurt the budget.
I would submit it already has hurt the budget for like 10, 15 years.
Oh.
We've been settling it, cleaning it up. It can only go up from here.
Right.
Doug, any
holistic in that comment. That's funny.
Any comments from Doug, or we're okay over there?
You know, I had another comment on Schedule 9. We've got a project on line 1. We have a projection of sewer service charges, and the rates approved were through 23, 24. And I see that in the next 2 years, we've continued about the same rate level. And my instructions to staff are, I don't want to see a 6% rate increase in those out years. I'm hoping that we can get these things below in the 4% range or less, you know. And I'm sure, I think we can based on these numbers. But so I mentioned to don't project at 6% and get us thinking that. I'd like us to, let's think 4% or less.
Yeah, we talked about it at the Finance Committee yesterday.
Yeah,
yes, definitely. And we'll make that adjustment before we present the final budget to you in June.
Okay.
And I'd also like to offer up that, you know, if there are other comments or thoughts that the board has between now and, you know, the June board packet, to please reach out to me. I'd be happy to entertain any additional questions or thoughts on the draft budget before the June meeting. And we do have, I think, another meeting scheduled that we might be getting together for as well. So anytime that's convenient for the board.
Are you going to put the changes in red so we can see, or so we can track them?
I'll look at that. Yeah, I think we looked at doing something like that last year, and I don't remember exactly what we decided worked best, but we want to make sure it's legible. The revisions are legible. So yeah.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public that would like to say anything? Seeing none.
Did Doug have a question or a comment?
Oh.
No? Okay, great.
Do we need a motion for this, or? Yes.
I
move
move
that we
draft fiscal year 2021 budget and provide direction to staff in preparation of the final budget.
Great.
I'll second.
Tom was louder than Doug.
Okay, on that note, Gaffney?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Meggs?
Yes.
Scylla?
Yes.
Borstein?
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Doug. Hey, Doug, do you know what this is? It's a Roman ordering 5 beers. I'm sorry. Okay, on to item number 12.
That's not bad.
Consideration of approving response to Marin County Civil Grand Jury Report, follow-up report on web transparency of agency compensation practices.
All right. Felicia's name's on the report. I don't know, Felicia, if you want, but I can give it a shot.
It's up to you, Steve. I think is my name on the report? It is on the report, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that was silly of me.
So take it away.
Okay, sure. So the district received a Marin County Civil Grand Jury report on web transparency of agency compensation practices, and this is specifically with regards to board member compensation. The board, of course, remembers that the district has a policy for board compensation, and that the district froze board compensation rates at $314 per meeting, whereas I think prior to that, it was going up regularly annually. In response to receiving the report, which basically stated that it wasn't so easy to find the board compensation on the district's website, the general manager worked very closely with NV5, who's our communications consultant, and pretty much addressed all of the comments of the grand jury within just a matter of a couple of weeks. However, we are required to respond formally to the grand jury within a prescribed timeline. I think it's 90 days of the published report date. So in this case, it would be by July 28th. And that draft response to the grand jury is included as an attachment to the staff report. As you can see in that draft response, the recommendations numbered 1 through 4 have already been completed, and recommendations 5 and 6 are anticipated to be completed shortly. So again, Steve, you worked most closely with the consultant, communications consultant, to provide additional details about exactly what implementations were made.
Thank you, Felicia. Good overview. And this really was a matter of making it the pathway to the information consistent with other agencies and just using certain terminologies. We had a lot of the transparency was on the website already, but it was just not to be found along these pathways, like the open government pathway. It was actually found through working for the district and things like that. So it was pretty easy to get these links and the expectations from the grand jury embedded in our website really rapidly. And frankly, appreciate the guidance. Standardization of websites is a good idea, so that public go to any of the district websites or the cities or towns, and if they're looking for this information, it's available in a consistent, standardized format. So we didn't see, there weren't really any impediments to that, and I encourage the board to follow these web links that we've established that are detailed in the response. And they link to the publicpay.ca.gov, and that is, they get the information from the different agencies and compile it and present it. And so that we don't have control over that part of it. We can just point folks to that, and then do our veracity in our reporting as we do anyway. And they get that information and summarize it. So we just need to get the links to the information clear on our webpage. The work to be done is just around making it clear what our policies are for compensation. And in our case, we're quite simple compared to other agencies. You have the set amount, the $314 per day that you're in service of the district. And there's specific language in the ordinance you've adopted, and it's a matter of placing that. Our proposal in this response that we're asking you to approve is just to put this existing ordinance in, and it's up to you to direct us to change the ordinance. But it appears to me, that the litmus test is, what is the policy? Be clear and transparent what it is. Well, we'll do that. We'll put it on the website. And there's an annual process, and I think Julia, you can chime in. But there's the Form 806 that we file for board compensation, and so we'll just use that process and have that as part of what's available on the website. And does that happen around July each year?
That's my recollection, yes.
So that dovetails with that process. And then they asked for an annual report on board compensation, and our proposal is to work with Melvin and Felicia and put together a table of the compensation. And it'll look a lot like what we report every month in the check register, because board compensation is explicitly reported every month. So we're just going to summarize that, and we'll categorize it according to what the grand jury report requests, in terms of reimbursement for travel versus compensation. And our approach, it'll be an annual report, but I could see it just being a table that's put together annually. So with that, happy to entertain any questions and direction.
Doug has a question.
Doug has a question.
Okay, am I on or am I muted?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. I don't remember, was this at the last meeting that we discussed this, or Steve, did you and I talk about this personally on a phone call? Their F6, where they talk about the exemplary report, I'm completely unimpressed with, and I was hoping that we would, and I don't remember again, Steve, did we discuss it on the phone or at the meeting? Our annual report, I'd like it to say, Michael Borenstein, Finance Committee X, Tom Gaffney, Finance Committee Y, Pam Miggs, whatever committee she's on. And I'd also like to see if there's compensation for what. There aren't that many that we're compensated for. I mean, I think I got compensated once, and I think that's for most of the board members. I think it should say CASA meeting, wherever the heck it was, because I happen to know something about the other report that they call exemplary, and it's not exemplary at all. And if it was broken out like that, I think the grand jury would be shocked.
Doug, tell us what you really think.
I think we should be transparent.
I see a member of the public might have a comment here. Unmute yourself, sir.
Well, he's also a member of the grand jury.
Yes. Well, yeah, right. But I did.
He's former.
Former. I'm not on the current grand jury, but Doug is absolutely right on that. That they didn't go quite far enough. All it would have taken was maybe one more sentence or two. But if you all do as Doug requests, you will outshine them. Thank you. That's all I've got to say. Thanks.
Terrific. Does other board members have anything to add to this other than good job, Steve and Felicia, and getting it done in a timely fashion?
When it was land speed record, and they didn't say anything nasty about us that got printed in the IJ. So it's a complete turnaround for the RVSD and the civil grand jury.
So do I hear a motion? Doug will do it.
I would approve the response to Marin County Civil Grand Jury report, follow-up report on web transparency of agency compensation practices, and ask the board agree to the direction we've given to staff.
I'll second.
That was 50 beers.
Yeah. Julia.
All right. Gaffney?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Megs?
Yep.
Zilla?
Yes.
Borstein?
Yes.
Unanimous vote. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item 13. Better sit back. This is going to take a while. Review and determine a need to continue the emergency action adopted in resolution number 20-1581, declaring a state of emergency and authorizing expenditures related to the novel coronavirus disease 2019 COVID-19. I think Steve can add something to this if he wants, but we're still in the middle of it, and legally we have to just continue this each month. So nothing to say.
I had a question. We're not going to be doing any capital work with no bid, without bids, right? We're not going
to. Well, I've got an emergency. It's like a slow-moving train wreck, landslide. But I'm not going to. I don't think I need to use COVID to do it. I'm going to come forward with an emergency wreck declaration that's independent. You know, it'll be, but it is an emergency, so you will see.
This wouldn't be used for some planned big capital project, correct?
No.
I don't see that. I think originally we had planned on this just notifying the board that, you know, we were in a unique, unprecedented environment we weren't really sure how we were going to need to exercise our administrative authorities, and we wanted to make sure that the board knew and understood that we might need to exercise some administrative authorities that we wouldn't otherwise normally exercise, such as alternative work schedules and, staggered shifts and telecommuting agreements. Just there were a lot of things, like I said, unprecedented, that we might normally have come to the board and talked about in advance of implementing. But I don't really see any, unusual contracts being let as a result of the coronavirus. We have purchased some additional PPE. Obviously, we've increased our janitorial services. Nothing outside the scope of our contractual authority that we would normally have executed. So, I think Andrea, at one point, we talked about, is this mechanism really necessary to continue? I don't know. That might be worth a conversation. Steve, if you have some thoughts about that. We are getting kind of back to, we are in a new normal. We've created a regular routine now with our environment of, again, additional cleaning and wearing face masks in the office and requiring social distancing between employees here at the district. And still, we're closed to the public. We're not allowing people from who don't work at the agency to just come in to the public counter. Yet we've devised electronic methods of serving our customers, and also obviously by phone. How long that'll go on, we're abiding by the county health orders. So I don't know. With that, again, does this emergency declaration need to be continued every month? I'll leave that question open.
If I might make a comment, I think for the time being, we're still in the middle of it. It might look like it's lifting a little bit, but let's say on Friday, let's say we said tonight, nah, we don't need to do it. And on Friday, that we'd be having an emergency board meeting. It doesn't cost us anything to do it, and we trust staff to do the right thing. And I'm sure that staff, if some crisis were to show up, would alert the board that something was happening. But I think my opinion is we got to just keep it going to allow for the possibility, unforeseen, that something might happen. I know we're getting back to a normal work schedule and all that, but that could change with one statement by the governor or something. So.
Yeah, this is a good discussion. I think we're under the county health order that's not expiring yet. And it may get then reconstituted. We got a whole new set of rules. As an example, in the last county health order, now there's large construction project requirements, and there's prescriptive requirements on a site safety compliance officer that's usually the foreman of the contractor. And then for a certain threshold, we have to have a JSAS, a JSAS. It's a new thing, which is, I don't even remember what it stands for, but it's somebody who is a third party that certifies that COVID-19 related safety requirements are being followed by the contractor. So we're going to rely on our construction manager to be the JSAS, but they need certain credentials. So they may have to hire some, it's complicated. This is a new rule that just came up a couple weeks ago. So I think having emergency powers, quote unquote, is helpful to us because we don't know what was going to get thrown at us in terms of just how our projects get executed or how our operation maintenance gets executed, because these health orders are still in effect. If they get rescinded and we look around and say, oh yeah, we're not doing things special anymore, or then maybe we lift the emergency declaration. I know it isn't not an emergency yet, we should just continue to have this dialogue monthly, and like we're doing now, but right now I can't see any sound reason for lifting the emergency.
That being said, do I hear a motion?
I move, let me read it. I move that we determine a need to continue the emergency action adopted in resolution number 20-1581, declaring a state of emergency and authorizing expenditures related to the novel coronavirus disease 2019.
Second?
I second.
Mary seconds.
I'll second.
Oh, too late. Mary did it.
Tom will second my second.
Okay, Gaffney? Gaffney?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Megs?
Yes.
Scylla?
Yes.
Borstein?
Yes, thank you.
Unanimous vote, thank you.
Okay, we have to look at our
No spill month.
no spill month.
Yay. And Steve.
Let's let Mr. Mixus say that. Hey, Steve.
Oh, sorry.
It's been an extraordinary time. I'm super proud of the supervisors, the collection system workers, the inspectors, admin staff. Thank you to Steve and Felicia. I've gone through a couple various experiences at Ross Valley. This one was special. I think we came together as a team and worked out hundreds of scenarios to get everyone back and constantly modifying and getting in there. But to me, I'm super proud of what we've accomplished in the last couple months, and we're looking forward to continuing that. So the month was amazing. We got the most footage we've had in a very long time. I put my supervisors through a lot, and they rose to the occasion, and I'm very happy operations maintenance manager.
Yep, they went way over the mark on the gear lines. And
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So no, it's great. And actually, so April is a snapshot, and you see there's no CCTV or repair, but that's changed for May. So you'll get,
Absolutely. So basically last month we focused, we're an essential entity. We even focused on our most essential duties on line maintenance and pump stations. And we shifted all our equipment, vehicles, staffing, scheduling. We modified that within 3 days. Rafael Zarco was amazing. Noel was amazing. There are two supervisors. John jumped in, Manny, and it was an amazing time.
Manny and John got into line maintenance. That was the thing. This showed how we could shift our forces into different skill areas.
Absolutely. So we have a huge amount of resiliency, and now starting next week, our condition assessment team is moving fully into with the brand new truck and the secondary CCV truck for condition assessment. And Manny will start doing point repairs, and we're back to normal with social distancing and a huge bracket of new signs and all kinds of other media to educate the public on please stay away from the operators and remain social distancing. So I'm very proud of this, and thank you to Steve and Felicia.
Yeah, I was very pleased. Yesterday morning, I was riding my bike up over the top of Laurel Grove towards the other side where Tom lives. And at the Ross Kentfield boundary, I saw the new truck with all the magnetic signs on it asking the public to keep back. And it was nice to see the truck in action.
Did you stop and deliver them pizza?
No, didn't know they were there.
I know you can't help yourself, Mike.
I know.
Hey, I have a question. On page 9 of the performance report, lateral inspections, what happens if they fail? What does that mean? What does fail
They
mean?
reschedule. They'll reschedule. Basically, the inspector goes out, says, "Hey, wrong type of pipe, wrong type of fitting," and they'll set up another meeting out in the field, and there's a scheduling fee generally.
Oh, okay. So they're working on the lateral and it didn't pass. Is that what it means?
Yes,
That's right.
Our inspectors are highly trained, and we don't let things go. So we will ask for a re-inspect and to make sure it's done properly the first time.
Oh, okay. Good report.
Thank you.
Yeah, this last couple of months, you know, the feel of Kerner has changed dramatically. It's now, instead of having one crew out of Kerner, there's two. And and then the landing has changed dramatically. Instead of having three crews out of the landing, there's one. And then we have a crew out of pump station 13, the pump crew. So we're doing this, we're using our existing facilities in a way to meet distancing. And, you know, we'll have the new engineer join us in the next month or two, and we'll need to adjust, you know, the way where everybody sits based on that. And we're looking at repurposing the crew room. You know, currently, we're not really doing conferences, right? So we're going to turn, and we already turned the upstairs conference room behind me here into an office. So we're trying to make do with what we have so that people are safe and not, you know, breathing the air of the other person in the same room to the max extent we can. And taking all those precautions that we're learning based on the science of the virus. So it's a constant adaptation, and there'll be changes. And so we have to stay on our toes and pay attention to what the guidance is.
Okay, if there's nothing else, the next regular meeting is on June 17th at 5 p.m. And I'm assuming it's going to be a Zoom meeting or an online meeting again, unless we hear otherwise.
You may have a meeting in between there, though. Isn't that right?
We may, but the next regular one will be 2020, and we don't know when that other one might be. So.
Yeah, there's well, and I think we're zooming in on it though, as they say. Julia, we've pretty much established it, correct?
Correct. I emailed the board and received a lot of feedback. I haven't received complete feedback from all the board members of their availability, but we have a quorum who is available, so I'll be sending out an email and following up with the contractors to create items for a packet for the special meeting.
And it will be on?
It will be on June 4th at 5 p.m.
Yeah, and that's a Thursday.
Yes.
And then we have the regular board meeting on the third Wednesday, which is June 17th.
Correct.
Great.
If there's nothing else, let's adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, board members.
Director Meggs?
Thank you.
Yes.
Did you have a question about the sewer service charge assistance program that you wanted to talk now, or we can talk over email tomorrow?
Oh, I actually talked to Felicia,
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
but thank you for asking. All right, be
Oh, you're
well.
welcome.
Bye.
Bye,
All right,
thank you.
good night.